Communications.
I'm a plumber and I'm on site for a job, and we're snaking a drain, and we've been pulling back. We probably pulled back about 10 pounds, 15 pounds of it looks like flesh type of stuff, meat, and we don't know what it is.
When these plumbers were called out to a quiet Ontario neighborhood in December 2017, they expected a routine job. A blocked drain is usually a simple fix. The plumbers brought their drain snake, an essential plumbing tool made of a long wire with a corkscrew end. If the blockage wasn't substantial, it shouldn't have taken more than an hour with this specialized tool. However, they encountered a problem. After several days of blocked pipes, the neighbors were getting anxious. They wanted a quick and easy fix. But what the plumbers discovered in the drains was anything but that. Their gruesome find would lead police to descend upon the area, turning it into a crime scene. The plumbers had discovered evidence of a grisly murder, with body parts callously flushed down the toilet. This is the chilling story of Rory Hashe. The first case. Let's start with Rory Hashe. She was born in July 1999 in Oshawa, a quiet suburb in Ontario, Canada. Rory was a bright and spirited kid with a fondness for animals and the elderly. She kept herself busy outside of school as an Army cadet, and by the age of 13, she had received the Cadet of the Year title twice. However, when she entered high school a year later, things took a turn for the worse. As a 14-year-old freshman, she was offered crystal meth, which marked the beginning of a years-long struggle with addiction. Rory came from a troubled background. Her grandfather, Bernie Guindon, also known as Bernie the Frog, was the founder of the Satan's Choice Motorcycle Club, which was once the second-largest biker club in the world. An outlaw biker with drug and assault convictions, he served 22 years in prison and had between 11 and 16 children. One of these was Rory's uncle, Harley Davidson Gwind, who owned a clothing store in Oshawa. Rory was close to Harley, who himself was a Hells Angels biker with a history of drug offenses. He had a tattoo on his back that announced his fight record in prison: 41 wins and no losses. Still, he had a soft spot for his teenage niece. In 2016, when Rory was 17, she lived with Harley and his family while he was under house arrest for drug charges. Rory's mother, Shannon Dion, had reported herself to the Children's Aid Society, believing it was the only way to get Rory the help she needed with her addiction. Unfortunately, the services didn't help, but Rory managed to turn her life around on her own. The last 6 months of her life were positive. Rory had a boyfriend, Tony, and even her own apartment. Harley had recently given her and her mother $1,000 to help with living expenses, but Rory had found a job and returned to school. Things were looking up. In August 2017, her Aunt Michelle Gwind took her to a drugstore to buy a pregnancy test, which came back positive. Rory was pregnant and wanted to keep the baby. She was looking forward to motherhood. However, at the end of that month, things took a tragic turn. On August 10th, an unexplained fire broke out in Rory's mother's house, injuring Shannon and killing her dog. This might have been the inciting incident in Rory's downward spiral. Rory was a regular at a youth center called The Refuge. Workers there noted that she had relapsed into drug use recently, though they said she was doing better in August. A few days before the end of the month, Harley met with Rory and noticed something different about her. She didn't want to talk about what was going on and seemed secretive. He described her hug as heartbreaking, the largest hug she had ever given him, a hug that felt like a final goodbye. On August 29, 2017, Rory's friend and her friend's mom took her to the hospital. We don't know the exact reason why, but Rory was described as having had some sort of mental episode. CCTV captured them sitting in the waiting room. Rory's friend and her mom exited the hospital shortly afterwards, leaving Rory alone to wait. She sat in the waiting room for 15 minutes but then left before she could be examined by a doctor. This was the last time Rory Hashe would be seen alive. When she didn't show up at the refuge for a few days, her friends and guidance counselor began to worry. Together with her family, they raised the alarm. Some people thought she had skipped town and reverted to old habits, but her closest family were sure she wouldn't do that. Despite her recent troubles, she was pregnant and in a stable relationship. They knew something was wrong. Then, on September 11, 2017, Her story took a horrifying turn. A grandfather and his 11-year-old grandson were out fishing in Oshawa harbor when they noticed something strange in the water. Initially, it appeared to be trash, so they tried to hook it to clean the lake. After about half an hour of effort, they managed to reel it in close enough to catch it in a net and haul it onto the pier. One of them recalled thinking it was an animal, perhaps a chicken, but they soon realized the truth was far worse. The grandfather said, "I think that's a body." The item drawn from the lake was, in fact, a female torso. When the police arrived, they determined it showed signs of trauma and that it had been deliberately severed from the rest of the body. Somebody killed a woman and dumped her remains. The discovery made by the fishermen turned the busy spot along the waterfront into a disturbing crime scene. The police took the torso away to be identified, reaching out to other services to see if there were any unsolved missing person investigations. However, Lake Ontario is vast, and the police couldn't rule out that it had been carried there from somewhere else. The absence of the pelvis from the torso made identification more difficult, and its condition made it hard to determine whether the victim had been pregnant. It took until November 10th, nearly 2 months, for police to compare the torso's DNA with DNA supplied by Rory's family, confirming it belonged to her. Rory Hashe's missing person case had turned into a murder investigation. But how had her torso ended up in the lake? Who had killed her? And horrifyingly, where was the rest of her body? There were no leads. The lake had washed away any evidence that could point to the perpetrator, and Rory's final movements remained a mystery. The grim discovery on December 28, 2017, the police were notified of a grim discovery by an Oshawa plumber. The plumbers were called out about a pipe blockage in an upstairs rental apartment that had lasted several days. The downstairs resident, Adam Strong, had asked the upstairs neighbor for a plumbing snake to clear it, claiming it was an inflated condom blocking the drain. The upstairs neighbors decided to call the plumbers. When they arrived at Strong's door, the basement suite was filled with a nauseating stench. Strong appeared nervous, commenting that the state of the drains was vile. As the plumbers snaked the pipes, they found something awful. The police arrived shortly afterward, suspecting that the material coming out of the pipes was human flesh. The plumbers were horrified by what they had stumbled upon and realized they had spent hours in contact with this man. When the police knocked on Strong's door, he opened it and said, "The jig's up, it's a body." They arrested him immediately. While in the squad car outside, he continued to talk, saying, "If you want the rest of her, she's in my freezer and she's pretty defleshed." The officers opened the freezer and inside, they found various severed body parts, including a human head. The neck bore a tattoo that read "Alive," the same tattoo Rory had. Her autopsy revealed multiple facial injuries and 2 fractures. The exact cause of death was uncertain, though drugs were found in her system. It was suggested that she might have been strangled or died from blunt force trauma. Whatever the case, she had died in a horrific attack. Strong's confession was limited. He did not admit to the murders but acknowledged knowing Rory and having had dinner with her. He described dismembering her body after her death, revealing that he began the process on Christmas Eve 2017 when the neighbors were away. Initially, he believed that as long as he stuck to practical questions about what he did after Rory was dead, he would be safe from further charges. However, the more he revealed, the more incriminating details emerged. Despite not confessing to the murders, Strong was charged with both. In November 2018, a year after Rory's torso was identified, the prosecution focused on him. Strong, born in 1972, was 45 at the time of the plumber's discovery. He was a gas station attendant and occasional film set security guard. Not much is known about his early life, though he claimed to have had a bad childhood. Prosecutors called 2 women to the stand who had relationships with Strong over 20 years ago. They testified that he enjoyed bondage and choking, which was consensual for one woman but not for the other, who felt frightened for her safety. This troubling behavior painted a picture of an aggressive and cruel person. Strong's defense suggested that perhaps the women had overdosed, and he panicked, disposing of their bodies. However, Rory's head injuries told a different story. Strong delayed the trial's proceedings, which took place in May 2022. After 4 years of emotional turmoil for Rory's family, the jury took just under a day to deliberate before finding Adam Strong guilty of first-degree murder. This is a heart-wrenching case, a tragedy for Rory and her loved ones, but it also sheds light on the importance of community support for those battling addiction. Rory was a vibrant, caring person who fell victim to a heinous crime, and her story serves as a reminder of the dangers lurking in the shadows.
Until next time, stay safe and keep seeking the truth here at Crime Archive 82.